Ty, brother Ty, how are you? Can you send me a alert and let me know that you can hear me? Let's see who's there. Let's go into my phone. Okay. Alrighty. And we are live. Hello everybody. I'm just going to double up on my phone to make sure that I don't lose you guys. As you can see, coming out to you. Let's see. Okay. Let's get started. So first things first, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to be doing this. A little excited and a little anxious because I'm always a little wary when I'm using new tech. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using a platform called Ecamm. Ecamm is something that sits within your Mac. And it's a really good live streaming platform. You can actually live stream to multiple locations with this thing. So I could be putting this on YouTube. I could be putting this on LinkedIn. And for the next one that I do, I probably will. But this is sort of like, the pilots sort of like to test this and to run my material past you. So you're getting a virgin pass at everything that I've got to say today. I would love to hear from you. Hey, Mark, how are you doing? I'd love to know if you can hear me okay. Just someone's drop me a line, send me a note. Let me know that you can hear me because for some reason, oh yeah, okay. The notifications are coming up on my screen through Ecamm, but they're not actually saying who they are. So if you could let me know whether the sound is okay, then if that's good, we'll get started. I'm almost on the point of getting over caffeinated, but I've actually switched to peppermint tea. But as you can see, I'm on my second tea bag of peppermint tea, and there is a certain amount of caffeine in that. And of course, the other thing is we could stop all this now. If you want to know the secret to my success, prosperity, and proactivity, it is actually Alpha Brain. Yeah, I believe what Joe Rogan said. I bought some of the stuff, and it is really good. Thanks for letting me know, Ty. I get it shipped over from the US, and it's really good. It's a nootropic, and it's got all kinds of weird and wonderful things. It's also got quite a lot of caffeine. So let's get this show on the road, ladies and gentlemen, squirrels and kittens, boys and girls. Welcome, thank you. So first of all, I would love to know where everyone's from. So just drop a note in the drop a line in the feed. Tell me where you're from. I know, Ty, you're probably in the US somewhere. Mark, I'm guessing Liverpool, but I'm not sure about that. So this is going to be the first of 3 trainings, okay? I'm doing one now, then I'll be doing one around this time on Tuesday and another on Thursday. You can relax, okay? If you've got a pen and paper to sort of take some notes, that would be great. But don't worry too much about it because I will give you, because I'm that nice a guy, I'm going to give you a whole Pitchcraft playbook between trainings 2 and 3. So you can work through and you have a record of everything that we cover in this training. And if you want, at the end of this training, if you message me, then what I'll do is I'll send you a PDF of my slides. So you can have a copy of that as well. But really, just sit back because what I'm going to do is I want to get this stuff out of my head because I know this works, right? So I'm trying to be as helpful as possible. I know how frustrating writing pictures and treatments is for directors and producers. I'm very lucky. I happen to enjoy doing it. And and I'm going to go into this later, because of my experience as a copywriter, creative director, and then executive creative director, I've sort of developed it, managed to elevate it to a fine art, which I call Pitchcraft. So I can actually feel myself beginning to burble. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with the process, because there is a process to this, and the process is encapsulated in my presentation. So let me find that. It is in Keynote, and I will start. So, like I said, Pitchcraft. This should go for about, hello Los Angeles, hello Sydney. Let me just see who that is. Mark, Luke. Good to see you, Luke. So, I've got everything set up. If I look over there, I'm sorry. It's because for some reason I can see the comments here, but I can't actually see who's commenting. So let's kick this off. You've told me where you're from. What is my goal today? Today I've set a very, very clear intention, because what I believe, working for coming up to 10 years now exclusively with directors and producers, that if you want success in the field, then my goal is to show you that getting your director treatments pitch perfect is the most effective way to win more work and increase board flow. And right now, it's only available through me. One person that I have a lot of respect for is Peter Thiel, and he's the billionaire that you've probably never heard of. He's the sort of stealth version of Elon Musk. And one of the things that he talks about is that the most successful businesses have a monopoly built into their business model. Now, I don't have a monopoly, right? But I am first to market with training in directors treatments, and I'm the only guy on the planet offering this stuff, which I'm really, really pleased about, because I love this niche. So it's something that I've been doing. I've become obsessed in writing pictures when I was an agency creative, and for the last 10 years, I've become obsessed about what makes a winning treatment for directors and producers. So I'm here to talk about that today. So, who wants to win more pictures? Let me know. Chris from LA, drop a comment. You know, just say what you would do if you could make an extra 20 to 100 grand a year. Tell me in the comments. You know, that's what we're all here for. We're all here to win more work. We're all here to be able to choose the jobs that we want to choose, and we're all here to sort of like, you know, find more success and have better creative projects to work on. But what are the challenges? Okay, like I said, I am really, really lucky, because for whatever reason, I like writing treatments. But one of the I put this together because I've done quite a bit of I would say, I wouldn't call it research, but you know, through 10 years of talking to clients, I know why I get work. I understand the issues that most people have with treatments. People lack confidence. They lack confidence in writing. They sometimes lack confidence in putting together a structure. They don't understand that there's, you know, you can have a process for writing a pitch. A lot of people are very uncomfortable in sales mode. Not Americans. Scott in Nashville, definitely not him. But English, it's kind of like 50-50. Some English are very, very good at coming in under the radar and doing sort of like, you know, charismatic sales pieces. And, you know, others are very sort of like, you know, self-effacing. And sometimes that doesn't, you know, that's great face-to-face, but it doesn't necessarily come off that well in the document. And then you've got the Europeans. And apart from the Italians, most Europeans, it's like they don't like selling. I mean, they consciously don't like it. There's a cultural issue. You know, the Germans and also the Nordic countries, you know, there's a tradition there of sort of like, you know, you don't talk yourself up. It's just not done. And then of course you got the Aussies, and I love Aussie. I'm here in Sydney, but there's a weird thing in Australia which is called tall poppy syndrome, which is like it's thinking that you're better than the rest. Or I've also heard it described by being in a bucket of crabs, because if there's a bucket of crabs next to a boiler where you cook them up, you don't need to worry, because if one crab tries to escape and it tries to get out of the bucket, all the other crabs pull it back down. So I guess what I'm saying is I work with a lot of very, very talented people, but they struggle on being able to express how they can use their talents to solve a specific client and agency problem. You know, how they can turn around and say, listen, I've got the expertise, I know how to do this, trust me. They can do it, they know how they can do it, but they don't know how to communicate it. The other thing, look, to be perfectly frank with you, is like, you know, writing treatments is a pain in the butt. You know, up until, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, it was just a couple of, you know, a couple of images and maybe a, you know, some bullet points or or a handwritten note from the director. But now, as you know, it's an all singing, all dancing coffee table book. I've got a rule of thumb. I try not to go over 2,000 words. I try not to go over 25 to 30 slides max. But with all, I did one the other week, which was, it was 50 plus slides. It was 50 plus slides for a 15-second commercial. I mean, it's just nuts where we are at the moment. And it's a huge amount of work. It's a huge amount of resources. The timelines are always crushed. It's always a supreme pain in the arse. And fortunately, I enjoy doing it. I think one of the reasons that I enjoy doing it is actually a very, very, very simple one, because I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for other people. But when you have to do creative work for yourself, that's always difficult. And as I feel being here, it's like it's the first time I've done a live in this format. But I've been doing lives now for about 3 months, and before I did lives, what I would do is I would just pre-record stuff on YouTube, and it's just me, it's just me having a conversation with a friend on FaceTime. Except I can't see that friend. It's actually an unnatural thing for me to do. To sort of basically what I'm doing is I'm talking to a green light so that it looks like I'm looking you in the eyes. I've worked hard to express myself on video. And I'm not saying I'm a master at it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's an unnatural act, right? I'm expressing myself. I'm talking about what I care about. I'm trying to be authentic. I'm trying to be vulnerable. And it feels uncomfortable. Anytime you try and do that, especially if you have to do it on the fly or you have to do it crunched within a tight deadline, it's difficult and it's unpleasant. So there's a very good reason why you don't like writing treatments. And also, to a lesser or greater degree, some clients really have an issue asserting themselves. They see sort of like being too salesy as being pushy, it's being sleazy. Anyway, we'll get into all those things. Those are the challenges. Now let's look at the opportunities. Actually, you know what? I will just close that because I don't know if you can, I think it's blocking your view on the slides. Let me go back to full screen. There you go. I don't know if you were seeing what I was seeing, but there was something that was sort of like destroying the integrity of these beautiful slides. So what's the opportunity? Why would you want to be knocking out white hot treatments on a consistent basis? Well, it will, so much about writing treatments is a mental game. In order to, what sells is basically two things: being cool and being confident, and the two are linked with each other. Probably the most important is confident, because if you are confident, kind of no matter what you look like, you are cool. And so when I work with clients, on a one-to-one basis, or if I'm writing a treatment for them, then, in essence, one of the things they're buying my confidence. They're buying my high self-esteem, so that I can look at a board, I can look at a script, and I can say, you know what? I know exactly how to do this. And the better that you get at writing your treatments, you get better at writing treatments by becoming more confident about yourself and your abilities. And your confidence comes from a process, which I will give you, a structure, some pro tips, but also an awareness of who you are as a creative, and where your strengths lies and how you can leverage them within the specific opportunity given to you, the storyboard in front of you. When you've got confidence, what you can then communicate is certainty. This is one thing clients love. They love monster conviction. They love to hear that here's someone who cares, who's focused, who's going to solve their problem for them. That's what they're buying. They're actually buying peace of mind. The other thing that confidence will give you is, and this will also give you confidence, is clarity. There's a reason why short with treatments is always better. Not 100% of the time. Sometimes there are some logistics that need to be dealt with. Sometimes there are some complex freight scenes. But really, you should be able to have real clarity about the value that you can offer. And if you follow my Pitchcraft process, you'll be able to get that, because what you'll be able to do is distill your secret sauce down into a big idea. And there's, different points in the treatment where you nut that out. Of course, the opportunity with getting better at treatments is you win more work. Winning more work is great. We are in seriously scary times in terms of the advertising industry. There's been, in most sectors, a contraction. Things seem to be calming down at the moment and, getting back to normal. But if you read that post that I put out by Martin Sorrell, different industries are going to be responding at different times. And also sort of clients have sort of got used to a weird way of doing things. So it's always been a competitive industry, but it's now become hyper competitive. And so what you really want to do is now's, there's no better time than to think about how you're approaching new business, because there are a lot of very, 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 very hungry people out there. And this is again why you want to be confident, because one of the things that puts clients off is desperation, is neediness, right? And I've seen I've seen people do that in the past with the treatments that they've sent out, because when I work with someone, I always say, okay, send me some of the treatments that you've got, and I can feel the neediness. And that doesn't work with clients. It actually has the reverse effect. You think about that in a relationship, if you're dating someone and they become very, very needy, it just becomes a huge turnoff, unless you're a narcissist. And of course, the other opportunity is when you're writing treatments, and if you can take a meta view on it, is it gives you a very liberating awareness of your creative abilities and your creative DNA and your own sense of style. And so it can be a really nice way to express yourself. It's, one of the things that we said when we worked in advertising is every ad is a chance to show people how clever you are. And it's the same thing with a treatment. So we'll go through the tips and tricks in a bit, but before, what is the big takeout for all of this? So after these 3 trainings, what I'm moving towards is, I talked about the big idea that I want to establish right now that I can offer you. And to be fully transparent, after these trainings, or I think in training 3, I talk about an invitation. If you want to take this further, if you want to work more closely with me, then there's an opportunity to do that. And the driving idea behind that is to double the speed you write your treatments and triple your success rate. Okay, that's actually the starting point. Sure, I could have said 10x the speed you write your treatments, 100x your success rate. But it's like, when I've worked with people on a one-to-one basis, after I've shown them what the process is, that at least cuts them half the time. That at least cuts in half the time they spend actually trying to write these things, and their strike rates goes up exponentially. And of course, the more you win, the more time you have. The better you get. The more time you have, the more treatments you can write. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. That's the end goal that we're moving towards, and it's time to go back in time. All right, let me take you to let me take you back to a boardroom in 1996. And look, I work in advertising. Okay, I tell fibs for a living, right? I'm fluent in bullshit, but I'm telling you what I'm about to talk about. Yeah, I was thinking about this morning. I think it's probably the most traumatic event I've actually ever been to. It isn't. It's just, it shouldn't be, but it was. I've been in bar fights. I've had people wanting to kill me, serious people wanting to kill me. I've had, how can I put this? I was in a ferry crash where a couple of people died. This huge ferry sort of plowed into this junk. But I can't remember feeling more awful and more scared and just more broken as a human being than when I was in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Jockey Club's boardroom in 1996. And I was working for JWT at the time, and they'd just set up this new business unit, and I was the creative head, and there was a suit there called James Z. And we were pitching for the exhibitions part of the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Now, the Hong Kong Jockey Club is huge. I think at the time, it may still be, it was the richest institution in Hong Kong. Because let me tell you something, you think Aussies like to bet? Hong Kong Chinese are nuts, well, the Chinese in general, they're nuts on betting. And the Jockey Club sort of controlled all the territories betting. I mean, they just had more money than you could shake a stick at. And we had this, we were pitching on an exhibition they were going to be doing. And it was a relatively small piece of business. But of course, as is the way with agencies, salami tactics, a war of attrition, it was a great in to sort of like, you know, the fattest, richest and most prestigious account in Hong Kong. And we had put all our creative eggs in one basket, and that one basket was that there was going to be a simulation. I mean, if you remember, this was 1996. So what we were actually doing was we had a creative virtual reality scene that we were going to take the client through, so they could see what the guests to their exhibition would experience. And I have to say, this was James's idea. It wasn't mine. I wanted to go traditional. I wanted to actually draw it out and sort of like make stuff look precious and do designs and show all the print ads. But fortunately, I'd lost that battle. And I'd also made it very clear, because I was a highly political, very sneaky creature. I made sure everyone knew that it was, you know, I wanted to go old school with this. But anyway, the suit overruled me. And we had to... we were relying on this tech company who were going to be our tech partners to put this thing together, and it wouldn't come together. We had to delay that presentation 4 hours, and it was just excruciating because we had our chairwoman there. Her name was, I won't say her name because I'm going to be rude about her. She was, her nickname was the Black Widow, and she was actually, she was probably a narcissist. She was just evil, right? It was just, she had this, anyway, she was very senior, and obviously within JWT, and I'd had quite a career in JWT, it's obviously imperative to sort of like, you know, keep in with the right people. And my credibility with this woman was just like shrinking by the second, because, you know, she wasn't happy that she had to go and tell the client that their team wasn't ready to present, and keep stalling the conversations. Anyway, it was 4 hours. We were supposed to be presenting at, I think, 8, and we didn't present until, I don't know, 11:30. And it was just dreadful. I can't begin to tell you just how, I mean, I shouldn't have felt, maybe I shouldn't have felt that awful, but I just did. And the one thing, I mean, it's funny that the only other time that I've spoken about this story before is when I've been in 12-step meetings, because, when you're coming to recovery, the idea is that you get a higher power. And that's what makes you feel great, because in active addiction, drugs and alcohol were my higher power. And all I could think about was I was going to this lunch. I used to go to this lunch club. It was called the Second Friday Club in Hong Kong. And the First Friday Club was when the governor and all his cronies, like all the heads of the banks and all the heads of the property companies, they'd all go out for lunch on Friday, and they'd get pissed. And Second Friday was when all their number 2s, right, their sort of 2i season. And that was the real fun one. And all I could think of was like, oh my God, I can't wait. Soon this is going to be over. I'm going to be released. I could just go out and get it was a Friday as well. I was just go out and get completely blotto, and I can just forget any of this ever happened. Anyway, there are no particularly impressive theatrics about it. The thing was set up. Finally, the presentation started. Sort of like I sort of like tottled on, press play, and this really sort of like, I mean, we all thought it was amazing, but this really quite average sort of like simulation started, and the clients weren't even looking at it. It was just soul crushing. And so I came out of there, and that was what happened. Right, we were in this real high stakes pitch. The stakes couldn't have been any higher. The creative was utter shit and didn't work. And my self-esteem has never, ever, ever, ever been so low. I mean, it was like we failed 100%. It was like complete screw up. It just destroyed me. I mean, it literally broke my soul. I mean, I don't suppose it was traumatic because I knew at the end of the day it was just a presentation, but probably nothing has affected me as negatively over those 3-4 hours as that did. I mean, I'm surprised I hadn't grown an ulcer. I've never felt so wretched. And now the weird thing is, looking back on it, I can kind of understand that. I don't know if anyone's a fan of the Enneagram, but I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is a very, very interesting thing because it classifies all humans into one of 9 personality types. And the way it does it is it says we're only one of 9 people, and each Enneagram is based on a childhood wound. And my upbringing was, my family environment was unsafe, it was hostile, it was, there was a lot of uncertainty. And so as a kid, what I wanted control. I wanted to be able to know what was going on. I wanted to be able to know that I could control my environment. I wanted to be able to see where the threats were. I wanted to know where the monsters were. And so that's why I've been always, the thing about the 8 is control. It's control, and it's defending. A lot of the time it's defense through offense. And I think that's why it affected me so deeply, because this was so out of my control. The stakes were so high. My self-esteem, my ego, my career, my reputation was all at stake, and I was just sitting there watching it going down the toilet. And I just felt like an absolute failure. But as is the way of these things, sort of like, when something that seismic happens, you can get an awareness. And the awareness that I got, the desire that sort of like grew in me, is I was like, thought, never, ever, 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 ever again am I going to put myself through this horror. It's like, that's it, I'm done, punto, finish. And I was like, I've got to figure out how to pitch properly, right? There must be a way. Because here's the thing, it's like back in the, it's probably still the same today, but back in the, the 80s and the 90s, in most agencies, when a big pitch came in, it was like the agency stopped for 2 or 3 weeks. There was so much work that had to be done in such a short period of time. Everyone was, especially in Asia, let me tell you, it's like everyone was working flat out anyway. And it's like that scene on Star Wars where Vader's inspecting the work on the Death Star. And he says, when is this going to be fully operational? And he goes, oh, well, probably like sometime next year. And then Vader says, well, the Emperor's expecting it to be done by Christmas. And the little guy goes, wow, he asks the impossible. And Vader says, you can tell that to him yourself. He goes, oh, the Emperor's coming here to the Death Star? And he goes, yes. And he was like, we shall redouble our efforts. And that was kind of like what it was like in an agency. We were all sort of like, running around, working our guts out, developing out of control drug and alcohol habits. And then a pitch would come along, and it was just like, and now we had to do all that, but with no sleep. So generally pitching was it was chaotic, it was stressful, it was great when we won, but it wasn't a lot of fun. And I just had this sense that, there had to be another way. I wanted to be able to pitch with clarity. I wanted to be able to have confidence, and I wanted more than anything else to have some control. And then, as luck would have it, a little after that, one thing came along was, the decision. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So I made this decision that I wanted to learn how to pitch. And I remember having a conversation with a very, very seasoned creative director. And he said something to me that an old Jewish uncle of mine told me, sort of like, back like a long time ago when I first started off, when I was actually first going to Asia. He said, remember, he said, there's one way you can always make money. I'm like, how's that? And he said, help other people make money. And I've never forgotten that. I go, yeah, and that's true. If I help other people to make money, I'll always make money. And at the time, it's like, new business specialists in agencies were always suits. There'd either be an account service guy who'd be a new business whiz, or there'd be planners. Typically planners would do that. But there'd never really been a creative, and I was thinking, ooh, that would be an interesting slot. It's not quite as glamorous as winning a ton of awards, but that's what everyone's trying to do. That's the game that everyone's trying to play. And one thing, so, you're saying, oh, Paulie, aren't you smart? I mean, one of the reasons that this appealed to me, it was because working at JWT, when you did a lot of new business, you got to travel around a lot. You got to fly around the region, business class, stay at very nice hotels. We had the account for Hyatt, so that was great. I mean, the Hyatts in Asia look like palaces. They're just amazing. And so there was travel. There was, and also you got to hobnob with all the country heads, right? It was always, when there was a big pitch, it was always the country head. So I was like, oh, this is good. This will be very good for me politically. This will be very good for me from a lifestyle point of view. And also, I think I'd spent like 3 years at JWT by then. I was getting pretty bored with the day-to-day work that I was doing this. So it was nice to sort of like, get taken off the stuff that you were supposed to do and then farm it out to freelancers and run off and go and hobnob with the president and his cohorts. It was a lot of fun. So that's why I decided that I wanted to become a new business specialist. And the opportunity to do that came when JWT in 1997 pitched for Thai International. And that was a pitch that was being run in Bangkok. And at the time we had a CEO there called Mark Capra. Capra was a very, very cool guy from New York, very classy. He used to be the head suit, excuse me, I'm getting a bit dry. He used to be the head suit on De Beers Diamonds and then became country head of JWT Bangkok. So I went over there and we worked on the Thai International pitch. And let me tell you something, Mark was, looking back on it, I just thought this guy worked on water. I mean, really what it came down to is he understood basic project management. And it's like people in agencies have just never used any of the project management disciplines. But Mark absolutely had it down. And we worked on the Thai International pitch. We worked very hard. It was hard work, but there was none of the chaos. There was none of the stress. There was none of the angst, and there was none of the misery. I mean, he understood esprit de corps. He was a really, really good leader, and he had a process. Hey presto. I didn't, to me, this was news. I just thought sort of like, pictures was, you look at what the client said, you automatically develop something that's going to be amazing from a creative point of view, and then retrofit a strategy to that. And that was a viable, in many cases, winning methodology of winning work. So this for me was a complete epiphany. I'm like, wow, isn't it great that you can pitch with a process, you can have a structure, it can be fun, there's no stress, it can be freeing, it can be liberating, it can be exciting, and it can just be a generally wonderful experience, whether you win or lose. Because the other thing Mark used to do is win or lose, he always used to take the team out for a massive dinner afterwards, which, let me tell you, Bangkok can get to be pretty fun. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because that's what turned me into, that's when I made the conscious decision so that as a creative, I wanted to become a new business whiz, right? And that was really, really life-changing, because what it does is it changes your focus, it changes your mindset, and it changes your orientation. The new business specialist, if you've got a few pitch wins under your name as a creative, that immediately gives you value, right? You literally are an MVP, most valued player. It's like they can hire any number of creatives who can win awards. It's just a numbers game, but there are very, very few creatives with a reputation for winning new business. So that decision served me very, very well at JWT. Again, it's the old thing. It's like, if you want to be sure, if you want to always be able to make money, make sure you can make money for other people. Now, how this relates directly to treatments is I worked in advertising. I decided that I was going to leave advertising. It's a long story. I won't necessarily go into it. Let's fast forward a few years later. Left advertising, decided I was going to be an art dealer, had the biggest art gallery of European, had the biggest collection of European art in a gallery in Bangkok. That didn't go so well. There was a recession. I joined a production house and developing quite a lot of content that never went anywhere. But the one thing that I was really good at, the one thing that I really enjoyed was writing treatments. After about a year of that, I went out on my own, and this is when I was doing it full time. And there was this one particular weekend when I was in Bali, and I was really excited to be back in Bali. I think I was like a year or a year and a half clean. I'd been there before and I'd really, really loved it because I got clean in Malaysia, and the meetings in Malaysia aren't actually that crash hot, but they're amazing in Bali. And I had this weird thing. They had, there was a morning meeting and an evening meeting. So there was a 9 a.m. and a 7 p.m. And I'd arrived on the Friday evening, and I really, 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 really wanted to, I don't know why, but I just was fixated on making the 9 a.m. and the 7 p.m. on both days. Anyway, while I was there, 2 different jobs came in, both for A-list directors, one out of LA and another one out of Amsterdam at the time. One was a hair job they were both for China. One was a hair job, one was a car job. So they were huge. And I had to do both of these at the same time over the same weekend. But the weird thing was, in my head, it wasn't like, oh my God, I've got 2 jobs that I've got to do both at the same time. It's like, I've got to do these jobs both at the same time, and I've got to make sure I get to my 4 recovery meetings, which I was, AA in the mornings, NA in the evenings. I don't know why I thought they were so important, but at the time I was, it's just as well I was brainwashed that well in early recovery, because, I managed to stay clean. I'm now in my 10th year. So I remember sitting down and looking at these 2 jobs and going, okay, how can I develop a process where essentially I'm doing the same things? How can I get an economy of scale with writing treatments? How can I apply what I learned as a new business specialist in agencies and do it here? Because I've got to do this because I've got to get to my meetings. So anyway, that's basically the start of the Pitchcraft approach. And I figured it out. It's basically like working off a creative brief. It's like, it's retrofitting the classic creative brief to a director's treatment, which is in itself a piece of content, right? People just treat it like a document, but actually it's a piece of content. So that's how I came to really, really, the life-changing idea that sort of like writing treatments is the spearhead of what's going to drive your success as a director or producer. Can anyone relate to what I've said? Any of my story? If you have, just let me know in the comments. Excuse me, while you do that, I'm just going to have a drink. Anyway, suffice to say, just to end the Bali story, is it did actually go really well. I remember I won both jobs, and I wasn't stressed out, because that's the main thing I would say. It's like when I get into my process, and I think I've said this already, but I'm going to keep saying it. It's like, if you've got a process, you don't need to trust yourself. You can just trust the process. I mean, just to be fully transparent, it's like, it may look as I'm making this stuff as I go along, but anyone who's worked with me knows that I love my post-it notes, right? To do this presentation, I thought quite carefully about how I was going to talk about this and how I was going to break it down. And so I did that. I wrote myself a script. I looked at the script, and then to internalize it mentally, I broke it down into post-it notes. And now I can relax because I don't have to remember all this stuff. I can just I can lean into my process. So let's go into that a little bit more fully. Writing pitch perfect director treatments is the most effective way to win work. And currently, I'm the only guy on the planet who teaches it. What I'm going to talk about now is the A-list advantage. Okay, what does this actually give my clients? And what I've observed is, I've been working with a coach for about 2 years, and she had me profile my clients, and I suddenly realized, it should come as no surprise. I'm sure you've heard of this natural law before, the Pareto principle. 90% of my work comes from just 8 of my clients. And these are people that are always busy. They're working a lot. A lot of the time, the further up the tree you get, the easier life gets. The more successful you are, the easier life gets. The struggle is getting up there. There's also something called, there's Pareto law, which is the 80-20 distribution. 80% of the wealth belongs to 20% of the people. It's also true, if you go to a party, you'll see that 80% of the drink is drunk by 20% of the people. Or if you go to, that's if you're looking at drink. If you're looking at the buffet, it's like 90% of the food is consumed by 10% of the people. It's one of those things that always holds true. And it's even in the Bible. There's, I think it's in Luke, or is it Matthew? I think it's called the Matthew principle, where, I wish I'd looked this up. It says, for those who have, more will be given. And for those that do not have, even that will be taken away. And that's kind of the idea that sort of like, if things are going well and you've got momentum in life and you're doing good, you'll enter a virtuous circle and you'll become more and more and more and more successful. But the converse is true. It's like, life starts falling apart, things start going downhill, you lose your job, you can't pay your rent, you become homeless. It's just like, when things are decelerating, they can decelerate at a very high level as well, and it becomes a vicious circle. So here are 3 principles that I've noticed that my A-list clients all have, and they all do, and my job is to amplify them in the treatments. Here are the 3 shifts that need to occur. The first thing, make ideas sexy. That's essentially what you're doing. If anyone's seen any of my content before, I've talked about this as making stuff cool. That's what we do as an industry. We take parity products and we try and make them cool. Not every time, admittedly there is, sometimes we are just disseminating information, but essentially, all advertising boils down to is getting people to spend money they haven't got on products they don't need to impress people they don't like. So the thing is, it's like, the directors that I've worked with that are always working the most have just got this incredible talent to take a mundane script and make it look really, really, really sexy. And that's something that has to come through in the treatment. Now, a lot of this is through the visual, but it's also how you think about it and how you talk about it. The 3 ingredients. When you're writing a treatment, if you remember this one thing, you might want to write this down actually, because if you remember nothing else, if you do this, your strike rate will go up exponentially. When I write a treatment, I'm really trying to communicate 3 things: excitement, enthusiasm, and expertise. Excitement for the brief, for the idea, the actual board the agency has given me, the board in front of me, or the script. That's what I'm excited about. Enthusiasm to be working with the agency team, the client team, about the shoot, where we're going to shoot it, the whole experience. And expertise, and this is what a lot of directors forget to put in. When they looking at various things in the commercial that are potentially problematic or challenging or difficult to pull off. You've got to be able to say, what, you're in good hands. I've done this before. Or you've got to communicate through the reference that you show that your taste will carry the day. Those are the 3 most important ingredients. My A-list clients, they can nail this every time. Admittedly, a lot of the time I help them, obviously, but this is what I'm amplifying: levels of excitement, enthusiasm, and expertise. And finally, get obsessed with creating persuasive pictures. And so much of this is a mindset shift. It's being able to look at a board. It's the process does this for you. It means it's a reframe of how you look at a storyboard. It's also that, there are also some tactical things there. I mean, now I wish I could say I do this every time. A lot of the time I don't. Sometimes I forget to take my own advice, and I regret it. But one of the first things that I do when I get sent a storyboard or a script is I look at the voiceover. I start with a VO, because it's like, that will tell me why we're advertising in the first place. So, all in all, I've been obsessing on how to deliver killer pictures for over 25 years. I'm not sure if this slide's supposed to be there. Okay, yeah, it is. I'm going to, in the next training, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of some of the techniques and the tricks that I use. But just for now, I'd just like to quickly recap what we've covered. You've heard my Genesis story, the Genesis myth, why I discovered that sort of like, being a new business specialist was such a valuable skill to have. I think we understand now, for directors and producers within this sort of, well, I wish I could say we are post-COVID, but we're not. Now is the time to really, really amp up your up-level or upskill and up-level your new business skills. We talked about the 3 things that my clients do to consistently win more work. They're masters at making stuff look cool. They're always able to communicate excitement, enthusiasm, and expertise. And they have a clarity, they have a focus that shines out, and confidence in the treatments that they produce. So we're almost at the end. Please let me know what's been most helpful so far. I'd love to hear. Remo? Chris, there you are. Oh, you were in Hong Kong as well. Oh, Chris says he can't see the slides. That's bizarre. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch off, take off my screen share. Oops. A friend of mine's 60th birthday there. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Has anyone got any questions? If you've got a question, let me know. Remo, if you couldn't see the slides, just message me, and then what I'll do is I will send you, I'll send you the deck. And don't forget, I'm going to have a Pitchcraft playbook, which is going to cover all the notes for this session and the real meaty stuff on the session that's happening on Tuesday, same time as this, and next Tuesday and next Thursday. So don't worry about taking notes, or if you haven't seen the slides, because I'll have the Pitchcraft playbook for you. But this has been a lot of fun. Hope everyone has an absolute wonderful weekend. It's run a little longer than I thought it would. I thought this was going to be 40 minutes. It's 49 minutes. But thank you. This has been wonderful. I'm sorry for the glitches in the technology. If you couldn't see the slides, I'll make sure I check it next time. I'll be sending you an email. If you haven't been getting emails with the notifications of the times, then just send me a message and I'll make sure that you get that. Take care. Love you. See you next week.